Hello, good morning. You've tuned into CNBC TV18. I'm Vinny Motiwala. With me is Vamakshi Doria, and you all have tuned into Power Breakfast. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. And Vamakshi, yesterday was an interesting day that we saw. Recovered from the day's lowest point, muted opening. Then we saw that run-up coming in as well for the market.
Well, absolutely, Vinny. In fact, this has been the trend for the last two sessions, wherein we've seen recovery from a muted start, and the momentum has sustained, and that is very important. So we'll have to wait and see whether or not it happens today as well. So let's get started with the top headlines then.
Absolutely. Getting started with the top headlines for the day, and starting with Wall Street. U.S. futures slip after a positive overnight session as West Asia conflicts escalates. Dow closes 300 points higher, while Nasdaq ended with gains of 1.5%. The Fed's two-day meeting begins today, and the central bank is widely expected to leave interest rates unchanged. All eyes will be on Fed Chair's commentary.
Stocks in the Asia-Pacific open mixed as investors assess the Israel-Iran conflict and await Bank of Japan's decision. The GIFT Nifty is indicating a muted start for the Indian market.
Oil prices rise as Iran-Israel tensions intensify, increasing the prospect of a deepening unrest in the region and disruption to oil supply. Gold prices too edge higher.
Israel and Iran have begun a new round of attacks as the conflict between two heavily armed rivals escalates. India begins evacuating its citizens from Iran. The first batch of 100 people will cross over to Armenia.
U.S. President Donald Trump says everyone should immediately evacuate Tehran and that Iran should have signed the deal. He will also leave the G7 summit early and return to Washington, D.C. amid rising tensions in the West Asia. And looking at the Asian markets, given that there are so many geopolitical tensions coming in, seems like a bit of a mixed opening so far that we've seen coming in for the Asian markets. Taiwan index managing to hold on to a gain of 1%. Hang Seng 0.04%, so muted start there. But Taiwan index, do not forget, yesterday was in the red, and Hang Seng also was in the red. Today, a bit of a green opening, digesting the fact, and everyone's watching out for those tensions that are going on in Israel and Iran. Looking at Nikkei, that's managing to hold on to gains of 0.5%. ASX 200, that's the Australian index, is also quite muted, but slight bit of a positive bias there. Let's look at what the Indian markets are indicating in terms of a Nifty implied open that we're seeing coming in. A red start is what we are watching out for. At one point of time, Nifty implied open was indicating a 15-point decline. Now it's to 23-point decline is what we're watching out for. So muted to a red start is what we're watching out for in terms of the Indian market, Vamakshi.
Well, absolutely, Vinny. And this is after the stock futures on Wall Street have now seen a dip after the positive session that we had yesterday. But, it's also important to recap what happened in the U.S. markets. Stocks rebounded on Wall Street as investors were optimistic that the conflict between Israel and Iran may remain contained. The Dow Jones as well as the S&P 500 ended with healthy gains, while the Nasdaq surged close to gains of almost 1.5%. We now have CNBC's Kate Rogers, who gets us a wrap of all the action on Wall Street.
For CNBC TV18, I'm Kate Rogers. U.S. markets were up across the major indices in Monday trading as oil prices fell on investor optimism that the conflict between Israel and Iran can be contained. The Dow rising 317 points, the S&P 500 up 56 points, the tech-heavy Nasdaq surging 294 points. The Trump Organization announced Monday that it's launching a new wireless phone service. Dubbed Trump Mobile, it's set to roll out in September with a plan that includes unlimited talk, text, and data. It'll cost $47.45 a month. That is more expensive than similar budget plans by Verizon and Mint Mobile. The company says the phone runs on Android and will cost $499. It appears to feature a gold-colored metal case etched with the American flag. Critics have repeatedly raised ethics concerns over the Trump licensing deals and other merchandise branding while in office. And WhatsApp announcing Monday that for the first time, it'll be rolling out ads directly on the platform. Previously, businesses could run click-to-message ads on Facebook or Instagram that linked to WhatsApp, while the platform itself remained ad-free. The move is part of Meta's broader push to monetize the messaging app. The company says ads will not appear in personal chats. That's what's happening here in the U.S. Back to you in Mumbai.
Thank you so much for that. And talking about the U.S. markets ahead of the FOMC meet outcome, which will be announced tomorrow, former Federal Reserve Vice Chairman Roger Ferguson believes that central bank will be very patient before another rate cut. Listen to what more he had to say.
I think they're not going to cut rates this meeting, next meeting. I'm not sure what's going to happen even beyond that, and we'll wait and see. So right now, I think they're in a wait-and-see mode. They're hoping for further disinflation, but they know they've got to be vigilant. And so I think they're going to signal a lot of vigilance this meeting and will be very patient before they cut rates, probably disappointing a few people.
Well, let's also hear out some opinion from Citi's Drew Pettit on the fundamentals of the U.S. market. Listen in.
Feel a little bit inhuman at these points, right? Like, conflict really isn't good. We all would like to see, relatively peaceful resolutions here, but honestly, markets are trying to figure out what the fundamental impacts are going to be. Unless we have really oil and other price shocks sticking around longer, markets could quickly look through these volatility episodes. So honestly, oil at $70 really doesn't change our thesis here. As we've moved past the worst of tariff fears, we think the market can find some footing here and companies can, start reinvesting in businesses again.
And Rockefeller International's Ruchir Sharma says that the market has become wiser and the market reaction to geopolitical tensions have gotten shallower over the period of time. Listen to what more he had to say.
Now, the markets have become even wiser over time, that these dips on geopolitical tension have gotten shallower and shallower. So I think that's what we're seeing here, which is that the markets think that, this appears like a scary moment, but in its collective mind, it looks back at history, says 9 out of 10 times the geopolitical tensions tend to be contained, and so carries on. Now, there's obviously a risk that there'll always be that 1 out of 10 times, and that's the fear that lives in most individuals' minds. But as I said, that history is better remembered than it's lived, and that 9 out of 10 times these things just tend to fade. And like in the past too, we think that this is a very uncertain time, but in the past there's always been uncertainty that tends to get resolved the right way.
Now, tensions between Iran and Israel continue to escalate for the 5th day as the countries launched a fresh set of attacks against each other on Monday. Take a look at this report.
Multiple people have been killed and homes destroyed as Iranian missiles struck Israel's Tel Aviv and the port city of Haifa before dawn on Monday. It prompted Israel's defense minister to warn Tehran residents would pay the price, and soon. Those comments were walked back later, with Israel saying it has no intention of causing deliberate harm to residents. Israel's National Emergency Services raised its death toll to at least 23 civilians since Friday. At least 100 more were wounded in Israel in the overnight blitz, part of the wave of attacks by Tehran in retaliation for Israel's strikes, which targeted Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile programs. Israeli attacks in Iran have killed at least 220 people since Friday, with 90% of the casualties reported to be civilians, Iran's health ministry has said. Several residential buildings in a densely populated Tel Aviv neighborhood were destroyed in a strike just a few hundred meters from the US Embassy branch in the city. The building sustained minor damage and there were no injuries to US personnel. Fires were seen burning at a power plant near the Haifa port, media reported, with search and rescue operations underway, emergency authorities said. Iran's Revolutionary Guard said the latest attack employed a new method, causing Israel's multi-layered defense systems to target each other. It said it allowed Tehran to successfully hit many targets without providing further details. There were no reports in Israel of interceptor missiles hitting each other. Israel's military said on Monday it had struck again at command centers belonging to the Revolutionary Guard and Iran's military. Israel began the assault on Friday, wiping out the top echelon of Iran's military command and damaging its nuclear sites. It says the campaign will escalate in the coming days. Iran has vowed to, quote, open the gates of hell in retaliation. US President Donald Trump has repeatedly said Iran could end the war by agreeing to tough restrictions on its nuclear program. Iran says it is for peaceful purposes, but Western countries and the IAEA nuclear watchdog say it could be used to make an atomic bomb. Iran said its parliament was preparing a bill to leave the nuclear non-proliferation treaty, adding that Tehran remains opposed to developing weapons of mass destruction. Israel is presumed to have a sizable nuclear arsenal, but neither confirms nor denies it. It is the only Middle East state that has not signed the NPT.
And now getting you the latest update on Trump-related developments, we have Dia joining in with us, as always, in our special segment, Trump Watch. Over to you, Dia.
The White House has announced that U.S. President Donald Trump is departing the Group of Seven summit in Canada a day early, citing escalating tensions in West Asia. He also urged everyone to immediately evacuate Tehran and reiterated that Iran should have signed a nuclear deal with the United States. U.S. President Trump also warned Iran to make a deal as Israel pounds the country, but he held back on working with fellow Group of Seven leaders to issue a joint call to encourage de-escalation. The U.S. president also voiced confidence that Iran would eventually sign a nuclear deal, as he warned, without specifying that the United States will be doing something once he leaves the G7 summit. He also said that Iran was not winning its conflict with Israel and should re-enter negotiations before it is too late. Meanwhile, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said Monday that the U.S. could stop Israel's attacks on the Islamic Republic with one phone call. Taking to X, Araghchi said, and I quote, "If President Trump is genuine about diplomacy and interested in stopping this war, next steps are consequential. Israel must halt its aggression, and absent a total cessation of military aggression against us, our responses will continue." And in other news, world leaders at the Group of Seven summit in Canada tried to push U.S. President Donald Trump to back away from his punishing trade war that poses a risk to global economic stability. That's all for today. Now back to you.
Well, thank you so much for that, Dia. But let's slip into a very short break now. Up next, we tell you how these overnight cues impact our own Indian market.
Welcome back and thanks for staying tuned into Power Breakfast on CNBC TV18. Now it's time we get to what will be happening in the Indian markets. How are we setting up for trade today? Important stocks to watch out for in today's trading session. And we have a team of researchers joining in with us this morning. First up, I'll go across to Vamakshi. How are we setting up for trade? Indicating a bit of a muted start, but what are the data points that we're watching out for today?
Well, a bit of a muted start for today, Vinny, but let's recap what happened in the trading session yesterday. Despite escalating tensions in West Asia, we did see the markets move higher. Nifty snapped its two-day losing streak and rose in line with most of the global markets. Nifty closed just shy of 24,950. The sensex too closed somewhere close to the 81,800 mark, and in fact, we had 46 out of 15 Nifty stocks close in the green, and some of the top contributors included banks as well as Reliance Industries. As far as the broader indices are concerned, the initial weakness that we saw in both of these indices, the Nifty mid cap as well as the small cap, reversed swiftly as the risk appetite returned. In fact, both of these indices broke their three-day losing streak and moved in tandem with the benchmark indices. As far as sectoral indices are concerned, most of them, in fact all of them, closed in the green, and the gains were led by IT, realty, oil and gas as well as the metal stocks. As far as today's session is concerned, we'll be keeping an eye out on the two-day FOMC meeting which commences today. We'll be keeping an eye out on the interest rate decision that comes from the Bank of Japan. It is expected at 8:30 a.m. today, and largely the rates are expected to remain unchanged, but we'll see how that unfolds. Apart from that, we'll also be keeping an eye out on some other cues as well. PM Modi attends G7's leaders meeting in Canada, and Japan PM and Donald Trump met on the sidelines of G7 amid tariff concerns. So that is something that we'll be keeping an eye out on. But apart from that, let's look at what the GIFT Nifty is indicating. For now, it's a 34-point cut. But over to Ria now, who will list out all the stocks to watch for in today's trading session. Good morning, Ria.
Good morning, Ma'am. Actually, let's take a look at the stocks to watch out for today. First up, we have Vishal Mega Mart. Now, sources say that a big block deal is likely to happen, and the block deal placement size has been upsized. Promoters are now likely to sell up to rupees 9,996 crores worth of shares in this company. Moving on, we also have Tanla Platforms in focus today. The board has approved the buyback of 20 lakh shares worth 175 crores at a price of rupees 875 per share via the tender offer route. For Biocon, they've launched a QIP yesterday on the 16th of June, setting the floor price at rupees 340 per share, and the company is going to raise rupees 4,500 crores via this QIP. For Z Entertainment, promoters are going to invest rupees 2,237 crores in the company via the issuance of fully convertible warrants on a preferential basis, and the promoters are now going to increase their stake in the company to 18.39%. For Hyundai Motors, this one will be in focus today. They've commenced the production of passenger vehicle engines at Maharashtra's Talegaon plant from yesterday, from the 16th of June. Nasdaq will also be in focus today. They've bagged a contract from NHS England to provide NHS board and SIRO cybersecurity training in partnership with Templar executives. Keep your eye out on NTPC as well. They're going to consider fundraising up to rupees 18,000 crores via bonds on the 21st of June. And lastly, two companies will be in focus on the back of some changes in the management. For IIFL Finance, the former RBI Deputy Governor BP Kango has joined the board of the company as an independent director. And for Bata India, the Bata Group has appointed Panos Mataros as its new global CEO with effect from the 15th of September.
Okay, Ria, thank you so much for that. But finally, Mangalam is waiting by to tell us what's going to be happening in the world of FNO. Mangalam, good morning.
Good morning. So yesterday was a good day for the bulls. If you look at it, on Thursday and Friday, there was a big dip on the frontline indices. Yesterday, there was recovery in line with what the global markets did. But we're still about 250 points away from the post-RBI policy high and the pre-war high as well. So if you look at it, the June 11th high of 25,222 becomes an important fulcrum on the way up, and at the lower level we will watch for the June 13th low of 24,473 as well. Why is that? Because oil prices have been rising. Yesterday when we closed trade, oil was closer to around 73, then went all the way down to 70 before rising closer to $74 as well. So all eyes on that. Cash market flows. The DII is bought in cash yesterday, 5,600 crores. The FI sold about 2,300 crores. But even as the markets moved higher yesterday, the Nifty futures moved much higher than the cash, and the premium expanded from 9 points to about 50 points, telling you that there was purchase by the FIs and index futures, and that's what data confirmed as well. 420 crore worth purchase, 2,400 long contracts is what they've added, and as a result of which their long contracts or long exposure now stands at 20% versus 80% short. But the bigger positive, however, was them writing more puts than calls. So they wrote 17,000 calls, they wrote 52,000 puts, nearly 3 times. That tells you there is strong support at lower levels. Where are those put writers active? 24,900 put writers active at 112 rupees premium, 24,800 put writers as well active at an 81 rupee premium, and you have 25,000 put writers active at 155 rupees premium. All of this tells you that 24,750 to 24,800 is an important support zone for the Nifty. Technically too, we have the 20-day moving average out there. The only fly in the ointment, at higher levels can we see some selling. Why do I say that? Because the put-call ratio has moved towards 1.14. Remember, near 1.2, 1.25, we see a bit of a sell-off for the frontline indices. Out of band is IEX, so that's one stock I'll be watching out for.
Well, thank you so much for that, Mangalam. But let's slip into a very short break. Up next, we get you cues from the commodities market, so don't go anywhere. Welcome back. You're watching Power Breakfast on CNBC TV18. Moving on then, we have Manisha Gupta joining us with all the updates from the commodity space. Good morning, Manisha.
Morning, and thank you for that. Well, it has been a very, very wild overnight market that we've seen in various asset classes, including commodities as well. I'll start with the crude oil prices because we saw the prices swing within an $8 range from the New York session to Asian markets right now. Well, the prices did close 1% overnight. We did see crude oil prices move 4% down in the intraday markets as well. In the Asian markets right now, we're trading 1% on the higher side. So as you can see, there are big swings coming in for the crude prices. Well, we will await reports on Iran and Israel on whether or not there is a ceasefire happening or there's a conversation. What is the U.S. Role being played into that? In the meanwhile, the street is also reacting to the OPEC plus month report that came in yesterday, where they believe that the global economy is resilient and will continue to be so slow in the second half of this year. They also have trimmed the oil growth forecast from U.S. on non-OPEC countries. That seems to be supporting prices a bit as well. And then to the gold prices, well, we did see a near all-time high of 34.65 yesterday. It's trading below 3,400 right now. So we've seen nearly $80 of a move come in for the gold prices also. Also, the traders are taking some profits after the prices hit an 8-week highs. The markets, though, will now focus on the U.S. Fed policy this week and the Iran-Israel conflict that enters day 5 as of today.
Okay, Manisha, thank you so much for that. But let's move on. And Citi's Max Layton believes that the Strait of Hormuz has the potential for a large oil disruption from Iran and Israel conflict. Let's watch for that.
We think it's highly unlikely that cargo oil will be brought into this, and therefore Strait of Hormuz is the potentially large oil supply disruption if it does happen. I mean, I'd just like to make the point that there's already a very big risk premium, geopolitical risk premium in the oil market. We estimate it's around $10 to $12 at the moment. And that risk premium's there for a reason. There's been no real oil export or oil production disruption in Iran. And yet the market's trading $10 to $12 higher. And that obviously reflects the potential for there to be a significant, if not if temporary disruption to the Strait of Hormuz supply.
Well, Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived in Canada today to attend the G7 summit that is taking place at the Kananaskis village in Alberta. This visit marks PM Modi's first visit to Canada since the diplomatic ties between the two countries deteriorated after the killing of Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar in 2023. PM Modi is set to hold bilateral meetings with global leaders and attend the outreach sessions at the G7 summit.
And with that, we're absolutely out of time on this edition of Power Breakfast on CNBC TV18. Thank you so much for tuning in. Up next, we have Bazaar Morning Call.